In 1957, Harlem had its own set of superheroes. Led by a man of few words, Ezra Keith had them protect the community from criminals who sought to corrupt the innocent. Their mission was to protect Harlem and all other communities in America like it. Back then, nobody was sure if they were even real. And nobody was quite able to put this connection between Ezra and his crew together. Not until long after he was dead. Before she was Misty Knight, she was the police. Misty knew Ezra back then as a cop hater that liked getting arrested. Her and her fellow officers were blind to his role as a leader and didn't realize what he was doing for Harlem. 2 weeks ago, Ezra was arrested for disturbing the peace, and 2 days after that, the man died in police custody. He was the fourth person to die like this during the summer alone, and both the police and the people of Harlem are on edge because of it. Ezra's niece and nephew, Hazel and Malik, advocated for trust in the law and asked the community to remain calm and patient. That message hasn't exactly been heard by anyone. Harlem has been placed under curfew, and the NYPD have deployed AmeriCops to enforce it. Mechanized drones deployed into the heart of the community. What could go wrong? Misty supports the police through and through, but even she has been wondering, lately, if the city is actively trying to cause a riot. She tries to keep a detective away from a memorial service held in Ezra's name, saying that the people just want to grieve. But the man insists that they disperse. Misty Knight is able to use her public connections to the superhero community to force the NYPD to back off. Ezra's family is grateful, and the next day they meet with Misty. Everyone is worried and looking for answers. Hazel and Malik want that too, and their friend, a woman Misty knows, who is going by the name Blue, wants Misty's help in getting those answers. Knight agrees and goes to the cell where Ezra died to investigate, but fails to find any clues regarding his death. According to the detective investigating this case, there are no witnesses, but Misty can tell this is a cover-up. It's the worst kind, too, where the cops don't even know what they're covering for. Ezra's autopsy hasn't gone through either, so Misty talks to the guard who is on duty one-on-one. She points out she is no cop hater, but they are officers of the law and have a professional obligation to uphold justice. She thinks he believes in this, and all she needs is a name. He gives her one. Eddie Figures from Little Mogadishu, and tells her something else. A full minute of security footage is missing from the night Ezra died. Misty is then approached by Blue, who asks what they are going to do about all of this. Whatever's going on, it is bad. Blue explains that her father grew up in Harlem and knew Ezra. She wants to help. This is a matter of family. As they talk about how they both live fantastic lives and that it's easy to forget the little things, their conversation is interrupted by a group of AmeriCops who inform the two that they are violating curfew. When they see Misty is carrying a gun, they attack. Misty is caught off guard. It won't happen again. And as for Blue, these bots messed with the wrong woman. Misty doesn't like any of this. These are still police regardless of their nature, and Misty was just forced to take a side. This is bad. Ezra is part of this, but something bigger is going down. She and Storm are going to have some work to do, but they aren't going to do it alone. Hello and welcome to Comic Island. My name is Arden, and this is my recap and review of Black Panther and the Crew #1. Now this is an interesting issue. It's hard to place, even just to understand what Marvel is up to. This is the third series they're running right now with Black Panther's name on it. And while that's fine, better than fine, T'Challa's a great character, it is surprising. Given that Black Panther is probably also on some other team of Avengers somewhere in Marvel's line, it puts his coverage on a level of a top-tier superhero like Batman or Spider-Man. Perhaps it is Marvel trying to create a mini-universe within their own world like they're trying to do with Daredevil right now for Black Panther, which is cool if that's the case. Or maybe it's all just an investment for the Black Panther movie. Who knows what exactly is going on, but whatever the case is, I did enjoy this comic. The writing was really not what I would have expected. I kept thinking we were right around the corner to the whole team showing up at some point in this issue, but no. 3 of the team members of the crew don't even show up, including the headliner Black Panther himself. This was an example of restraint and build-up, something I hardly even recognize given how most team stories kick things off these days. So it works kind of well because you know when the team does get together, it's going to be all the more meaningful because we get to see what brought them together. But we don't need to do flashbacks or a weird recruitment montage. It just seems like the group's going to form as a response to this crisis in Harlem. The first mission will include a story of how they come together. That's a very organic way to begin this series, which I really appreciate. The team seems cool too. Each of these characters are pretty well established and are all pretty awesome, including Manifold. I haven't seen much of him since time runs out. I am curious what he knows and remembers from all of that, and well, we'll see. Come to think of it, what does Black Panther remember of all of that? Because he had a really interesting role in those stories too. I don't know. The slow start of this story is excellent for pulling the reader in, but only gives us so much to go on. The comic reminds me a lot of a first issue out of an independent series from Image or something. The slow burn of the beginning does mean that we don't get as much content in the first issue, but it is leading to what will likely be a good, rich payoff because of it. But it does make it hard to judge the series from the first issue alone. I don't have a lot to go on, so it's hard to tell if this thing will be worth reading in the long term. But I am leaning towards yes. It was a cool read and the art kind of makes it worth the price alone. There's lots of great imagery, but it's this panel that keeps sticking in my memory. That's a really nice touch showing off the reflection of Harlem in this robot's face. And there's just something haunting about the way they're all just floating in the air in silence. The authoritarian uniforms and the empty face, mixed with some really impressive work by the art team, made this image really stick with me after I read this comic. Oh yeah, so I guess I should talk about the whole political angle of this thing. This comic is very clearly evoking the Black Lives Matter movement and all of that stuff, and I'm sure it will invite some choice words from the usual suspects. But you know, politics is no stranger to the world of superhero comics, and anyone who tells you otherwise, I name a liar. This comic does a pretty good job at tackling the issue just the same. Misty is a very important character in that regard, as her struggle with her role as a community leader and former police officer really comes into play here. As such, the police aren't really presented uniformly, or the issue isn't presented in a singular way. Some of the cops are dicks, some of the community members are probably jerks too. Other people really care. It's a messy situation that writer Ta-Nehisi Coates doesn't shy away from. This ain't no Pepsi commercial, that's for sure. It reads as authentic and well-meaning in its purpose and design. Coates is a writer, like a real prolific writer and journalist. He knows what he's talking about and doing here. But there is a cost to his more grounded take on a superhero team comic. Black Panther and the Crew doesn't premiere with a lot of fanfare or superhero antics. That's okay, because it instead focuses on real human issues. But in a comic about a team of superheroes, I do wonder if it could benefit from a little more of the fun stuff. But maybe not. This comic reminds me a lot of the older Captain America comics that were very political and tackled issues like this head on. They never really opted for much fanfare either. As the nice little letter from the editor states at the end of this comic, it's paying homage to Christopher Priest's old comic, The Crew. As they put it, though the series has a different cast, it has similar goals and a mission statement. That's neat. Honestly, it's just cool that this comic openly has a mission statement to begin with. It's a more serious fare than the typical superhero comic, and that's good. Serious is good, or at least it can be. As for having an all-black team, that's no longer anything new under the sun, even over at Marvel these days. But it's no different than the all-white team of X-Men I reviewed yesterday. Not really. It is what it is, which really isn't much on its own. What matters to me is more the story and the art, and those things are spot on, even if both can be a little wonky at times. Yes, as much as there are good and interesting things to talk about here, the writing does get a little bit heavy-handed and even goofy at times, and there are a couple panels that could have used a little more detail to give them a little more emphasis. But again, there's only so much time in a day to do detailing the art and stuff, and based on what we saw in this comic, it's worth reading and I do recommend it. The good and interesting parts outweigh the slightly clunkier elements of this comic, and I did like Black Panther and the Crew #1. This was our Patreon bonus review for last week, actually. Easter was a little bit busy for me, but I'm rapidly catching up. I do apologize for that, but we're pretty much there now. So stay tuned for this week's batch of reviews, which should start rolling out today and tomorrow, or something. I don't know. We'll figure out the scheduling soon. There's a lot of cool stuff coming out right now, so if you want to say in what we end up reviewing, be sure to check out our Patreon page to find out how. Thanks for watching this video. Your support means the world to us. Finally, don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep reading comics.